What is up, YouTube? We are here with Alex Carmenaty to do our Week 3 NFL predictions. Uh, we cover every game as usual. I hope you guys enjoy, and yeah, let's get into it. All right, so the first game I want to talk about, Alex, and I think it's going to be a nightmare because it could be equal to the first game with the Giants Cowboys. We got Giants 49ers. Who do you got?
Jason, I'm going with San Fran, not just because San Fran's the better team. San Fran is the better team, but at the same time, it's just really you. If you choose the Giants in this match, you're out of your mind. And not just that, they've got the Giants, they have the Dolphins coming up, the Seahawks coming up. They have a whole slew of tough opponents coming up these next couple of weeks. So it's not going to be easy for them going in. Now, I will give New York the credit for pulling off that great comeback and Arizona folding like a cheap suit. I'll give all of that to them. But you're not going to beat San Francisco. San Francisco is 2-0 for a reason. They're a very good team. Their defense is the best in football. And if we have a similar result of the first 30 minutes to what we saw in Arizona, there is no way on God's green earth that the New York Giants will pull off that comeback for a second straight week. Because San Francisco's defense is a lot better than Arizona. And on
100%.
top of that, Brock Purdy is playing out of his mind with this solid offense he has for the 49ers. So it's as clear as day. San Fran's going to win. Maybe the Giants put some type of effort, but they'll win by double digits.
Yeah.
The 49ers.
Yes. I'm gonna obviously. Look, I'm scared for this game. I think we're gonna get absolutely ran over, especially with the fact that there's a very strong chance we don't have Barkley
Well,
because of
yeah,
the
that
ankle injury.
that
Um,
that's a key thing too. And again, the Giants won the game, and give them all the credit for that comeback. But that's another hindrance for the Big Blue offense. If Barkley can't play, not just for Thursday, but for a multiple span of time for weeks, maybe for a month or two, potentially how serious the injury is. If they lose him for a certain period of time, especially in this crux of the hard portion of their schedule, it's not going to look pretty for the Giants. Now,
yeah.
the fact that they won this game is a miracle in its own right. But that win alone is so fundamental to what could happen later down the road for
Yes.
this season for the Giants.
I don't want to discredit the Giants in that game. It was an amazing comeback. It looked like a completely different team in the second half. But we all gotta keep in mind it is a tanking Cardinals team
Yeah.
that they did that against. Uh, you look at the difference between obviously the Niners and the Giants. The Giants roster doesn't, even come close to that Niners roster. So I just don't see how it's possible, especially with no Barkley. I'd say with Barkley, it went from Barkley playing, they probably had like a 5% chance. It dropped even lower than that now. I'd say. I just
No,
don't
yeah.
see
I
it.
mean, again, it's not going to be pretty. I mean, you would hope the Giants put some type of effort, but we all know how good San Francisco is, and they're at home. Thursday night game coming off two straight wins. This is their first home game of the year, so their fans are really going to be riled out for this matchup in week 3. They get to bring their talents home, and they play a Giants team that has been a mess so far,
Yes.
despite the comeback win on Sunday. So San Fran has the home field advantage. They're the better team. It's a money decision to go with the 49ers here.
Yes, I agree. And the last thing I'm gonna say on this game is obviously a couple people on the defense have already gotten hurt, and they've mentioned it during both Giants games that they have a very inexperienced group of guys on
Yeah.
defense. Uh, that just doesn't bode well against San Francisco or the next couple of teams they play. I think the Giants are gonna be in a really terrible stretch coming up.
I mean, again, it's tough, but this loss can start a really rocky road following Thursday.
Yep. All right. So the next game to kick off Sunday, we got the Falcons Lions, which based on how the Falcons look, I feel like this could be actually a really fun game to watch. What do you got on
No,
this one?
I will give Atlanta the credit. Desmond Ritter's looked good. Bijan Robinson's been a talent so far. They drafted him in the top 10 for a reason. Now, despite some concerns of taking a running back in the first 10 picks, so far it's worked out for Atlanta. And And honestly, Detroit is still a solid, fun team to watch. But losing that game to Seattle has somewhat of a concern on whether or not they can hold out a close battle for a third week. Now, look, they
Yes.
came back versus KC, picked up the great win. They had the lead versus Seattle, lost the lead, and then lost in overtime. So the question really is, how is Detroit going to respond following that loss? And on
Yes.
top of that, for Atlanta, if Atlanta has some type of lead, or rather if Detroit has some type of lead, who is going to be able to, really, swing the balance of power
Yep.
in their favor? So this is really all on how Detroit plays. Atlanta's playing good; they're playing phenomenal. They had a great comeback versus my Packers last week, but can they make it 2 straight games where they're at least coming back to beat
Yep.
2 straight NFC North teams?
Yes. For this one, actually, I mean, I'm sure you know it. Obviously, the Lions are without David Montgomery. St. Brown's questionable. He's a little banged up. Uh, I'm gonna actually have to go with the Falcons on this one. I think the Falcons just look really good. Desmond Ridder has surprised me. Um, look, I think the Lions will look good. I think they'll come out there, trying to bounce back from that game. Look, they lost in a really rough way.
Uh-huh.
Missed holding call on Seattle really cost them that game. They would have, been put back 10 yards and that touchdown wouldn't have happened, and maybe they hold them to a field goal.
Right.
But if you don't have David Montgomery and potentially no St. Brown, I just don't see that offense doing too much. And I know
I
you have
mean,
Laporta and you have
yeah.
Reynolds, but St. Brown and David Montgomery are huge losses on the offense.
Well, look, I mean, those are the two fundamental pieces on what makes Jared Goff somewhat of a successful quarterback and really a good quarterback with Detroit. And if those two guys aren't playing, then yeah, there are some reasonable concerns on how they're going to play versus the Falcons. But at the same time, Jared Goff has to adapt to situations like this. And you're better off dealing with this problem in week 3 than you are in week 13, week 14, week 15, week 16, week
Yep.
17, even week 18.
Yes.
So rather deal with this problem now and overcome this challenge in week 3 rather than having it, determine whether you make the playoffs or not in the last few weeks or so.
Yes, no, 100%. This is the time for that to happen just because of the fact that this doesn't look like it's going to be an amazing division this year. Vikings don't look good.
Yeah.
The Bears just, I don't know what's
Chicago's
going.
a disaster.
Yes,
And I am
Chicago's a
loving
mess.
every second of it.
I think it's really right now between obviously the Packers and Detroit.
Yeah.
If this was to happen in week 15, 16, like you said, or whatever it was, it might be too late. You might not be able to fix it. You might end up blowing your season.
Right.
So figure it
Right.
out early against what might not be the best division this year, and you know, see what you could do without those guys. Again, I do think the Falcons win this game just without those guys. I think the Falcons, and I can't believe I'm saying it, are the better team.
Well, look, I mean, again, it's early on, and there's no guarantee that St. Brown's going to miss the game. We'll see what happens, obviously. But
Mm,
as of right now, it really is, Jay, more of a coin toss
yeah,
because part of it is not just Detroit trying to bounce back, but whether or not Atlanta can actually play good
yeah,
against a Detroit team that's banged up. So
yes,
part of it is really also on the Falcons. And on top of that, the NFC North is going to be a weak division.
yep.
The NFC South is not that much better either.
No, no,
So it's going to be sort of a balance of power between these two teams on who can have the edge early in their weak divisions. And
100%.
on top of the fact for Detroit, Montgomery might be out. They draft Jahmyr Gibbs for a reason
Yeah,
at 12. So this could be a prime example to see, okay, what is the kid's worth? Can he actually play well?
true.
Can he fit in for David Montgomery? And if he's able to take over, then there's no question for Jared Goff on whether or not he can play without some of his top players.
Yes.
So it all depends on these other factors on top of the fact of Jared Goff. How is he going to adjust literally last minute?
Yep. The last thing I'll say on this game is, and this is a concern I've had with St. Brown, obviously, ever since he entered the league. He is an amazing player, but he always has these minor little injuries and stuff that really affect him, whether he has to leave a game for a little amount of time and maybe comes back, or potentially might miss a game. Like that is a concern. Um,
Yeah.
so hopefully at some point he's still young, he can figure that out, not get hurt as much because I feel like there's like every season there's like 3 or 4 games where he has to come out of a game briefly because of some sort of injury. So hopefully he could get that sorted out. It will be a fun game no matter what happens. But let's move on to, in my opinion, the 2 most disappointing teams so far this year based on last year, the Chargers and the Vikings. Who do you got?
Well, I mean, honestly, Cincinnati's up there too
Yes.
in that conversation. But this is a tough one. You want to lean towards Minnesota, despite the fact that they blew the game, played awful versus the Eagles, had 4 turnovers in the first half, but they lost respectively by 8 points after being down by double digits.
Yep.
And even though they've had the issues offensively and some problems with injuries and what have you, Kirk Cousins has over 700 passing yards in 2 games this season,
No, that is incredible.
despite them losing those games to Tampa Bay and Philadelphia. So, honestly, if Kirk Cousins is on the money again and he can get some help from his defense, and keep in mind the Chargers so far have been the kings of blowing leads in 2
Yes.
weeks, you lean towards Minnesota. And for the Chargers, I mean, look, the offense has been good. That defense is atrocious. Even with Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, J.C. Jackson, Derwin James, you have all these solid defensive players, but you
Just
have an
won't click.
incompetent
Yeah.
coach in Brandon Stanley.
Yep.
So really, it's really Minnesota's game to lose because
Yes.
both defenses are not pretty, and honestly, it's going to be a high-scoring game. But with how well Kirk Cousins is playing so far this year, you got to give them the edge, on top of the fact with how poorly organized the Chargers are as a whole. I mean, they should have beaten Tennessee, but of
The
course
Chargers should be
they blew
2 and
that
0.
game.
Actually, they should be 2 and 0.
Oh yeah. And
They blew it
Minnesota
to the
to a certain
Dolphins.
extent to a certain extent should be 1-1 at a 500 record.
Yes.
But you see these things not working out for them. And again, for the Chargers, these 2 blown games with how poorly they played, they're going to start to feel it from a Vikings team that is desperately looking for a win in Week 3 with how well Kirk Cousins has played.
Yes. I'm gonna say it now. I actually do think the Vikings get their first win here. I don't trust that Chargers defense at all. And I feel for Herbert because he is so talented. He is an amazing quarterback. They're putting up almost 30 points every game, even last season, and they just blow games and give it right back because the defense is non-existent. It is absolute Swiss cheese defense. And
well, I mean, Jason, last year they were up 27-0 at halftime versus Jacksonville. How do you blow that game in the playoffs? Unbelievable.
They took some advice from Matt Ryan.
Well, not just Matt Ryan, but they easily went to the Brandon Stanley School of Charm, which doesn't win you much to begin with, obviously. Nah. So it's been a whole debacle for them in that sense. And what's so intriguing now, as you think about it, the last 3 games they've played, including the last year's playoffs, they've blown all 3 games.
Yep. So it's just hard to have any faith in that Chargers team. They gotta figure something out for me to be able, unless they're playing a really bad team. It's hard for me to really have faith in them just because of how weak that defense is. Again, that offense could put up 30 plus points every game, but most of the time they give up 30 plus points as well.
I'll be honest with you. I wouldn't trust them against the Jets right now. That's how bad they're playing, and that's how bad their defense is. Now, again, they're putting up a whole bunch of points. Don't get me wrong, but if that defense can't match the offensive counterpart, then you have no hope. And honestly, they can make Zach Wilson look like a Hall of Famer. That's how bad they're playing right now.
No, I agree. I'm gonna take the Vikings in this one though. Moving on to the next game. And this is when this is you guys, Saints versus Packers, which I could see being a good game, actually.
It is going to be a very good game. From what I saw yesterday or 2 days ago, whatever it was, at the time, the point spread was minus 1.5. So this is going to be a really, really close matchup. Now, Green Bay has the home field advantage. It's their home opener. coming off 2 games on the road in Chicago and Atlanta. New Orleans has a really good team, and Derek Carr's been very solid. So this is really a coin toss. I hope the Packers pull out. Jordan Love has played phenomenal. He's had 6 touchdowns in 2 games. I've been very impressed with him so far. So I can lean towards Green Bay, but I could also lean towards New Orleans with how well they played with Derek Carr, the offense, and also their defense has been pretty good too. My
Yes.
concern for Green Bay is like last week, can they hold off in the final minutes of the game? Because that
Yes.
defense did not play well, and the defense cost them the game. And we saw again the horrific play calling of the one and only Matt LaFleur.
Yeah.
So it really has to be a full game for Green Bay. If there's not a full game, New Orleans comes in and wins. But
Yes.
if there's a full, complete effort throughout each quarter, Green Bay could sneak out with a win, or honestly, this game might need overtime to settle things.
Yep. I'm not too sure. I don't know if you've seen anything this week. I'm not too sure the status of Aaron Jones or Christian Watson. That could be a huge piece of the game as well. Dobbs has played great. Dylan's looked good when he had to step
Yeah.
up. But without those guys, it is hard. It really is a hard challenge. I mean, you're without your top guys for a
Oh, yeah.
quarterback who's trying to establish himself in the league. So that's a really rough way for Jordan Love to start. Um,
Although, Jason, he's not thrown a ball to Christian Watson so far this year. He has 6 touchdown passes. And let's keep in mind, 2 of those touchdown passes were the Jalen Reed last weekend, who was
true.
this rookie receiver they drafted in the later stages of this year's draft. So despite it being Christian Watson or not, he's had some pretty good connections
Oh
so
no,
far.
100%. It just makes it a little more difficult for him trying to get going. One thing I will say about the Saints, and obviously only having played, I believe, like 10 games over the last like 3 years or whatever it is. I forgot the exact number. I'm impressed with Michael Thomas. He actually has been he's looked really good so far this year. So, I mean, the Saints could be, if they could get, healthy Michael Thomas for this season, Chris Olave, they could be a scary team. Obviously, the other night they lost Jamal Williams to an injury. I think he hamstring injuries, so that sucks because those injuries linger. Um,
Oh, yeah.
but I'm impressed with them so far. I really am. I mean, look, it wasn't the prettiest game against Carolina, but you're playing against a young Carolina team as well, so you don't really expect a amazing football game probably there. But yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be a close one. It is a coin toss. It's hard to say. Uh, I do think the Saints, but I wouldn't be surprised if you guys win this game.
Look, who knows where it's going to go? It could go either way. It will go either way. The thing is also with how early the season is, with how weak both divisions are that the Green Bay and New Orleans are in, any win they can get
Is
early on
massive.
is going to
Yeah.
be helpful. On top of the fact that you have Atlanta and Detroit also facing off in a South versus North kind of NFC matchup.
No,
So
100%, yes.
those are 2 games that all 4 teams will definitely be affected by.
Yes. All right. So I want to move on and to the Texans Jaguars game. And I think after last week, and I know he was playing the Chiefs, but Trevor Lawrence didn't look that great last week. I
Yeah.
think he needs a bounce back game. I'm curious on your opinion on this one.
It's going to happen. Now, look, Kansas City came in there, took care of, business in Jacksonville. They played well. And although there were still some kinks for Kansas City, they got the win. They walked out of it. Trevor Lawrence did struggle a lot. And this Jacksonville defense and this team as a whole just, I would say, sort of overestimated Kansas City after the week 1 struggle. So
Yeah.
that was the concern there. But honestly, you need the bounce back, and they're going to get the bounce back.
Yes.
Houston has a horrific defense. Despite C.J. Stroud throwing nearly 400 yards last week,
Yeah.
they still lost by more than 20 points.
No, 100%.
So at the end of the day, you're going to see a bounce back for Trevor Lawrence. You're going to see Jacksonville win the game. But I think you're also going to see another solid week of C.J. Stroud and this Texans offense.
Yeah, no, I actually, watching Stroud, I like him out there. He looks good. And I said it to you. The Texans are going to be a team that barely wins any games, but they look good while losing. And I know obviously losing by as much as they did, that's not great, but they did look decent out there at times. They had their moments. There's not too much I have on this game. I think Jacksonville comes in there, wins. Christian Kirk, I think, could be a guy who has a big game, especially against that weak Texans defense.
Yeah.
You gotta, because it didn't happen against the Chiefs, you gotta get ETN involved. That's
Oh
one
yeah.
thing. He
Well,
was
look.
struggling there. Zay Jones needs to get involved. So
Well, look. I mean, again, this team, Jacksonville, has a great pass option. They also have a great run option. And after struggling last week, you want to bounce back in all areas. And
yes.
it's a better way to do it against a team like the Texans.
Yep, no. All right, moving on, which could be what could be the blowout of the week, especially with how bad this team is. We got the Broncos versus Dolphins. I'm curious what you have to say on this one.
Tua guarantee lock this in for the week. Tua will throw for more than 250 yards. That's how bad Denver is. And honestly, the Broncos had the lead and they blew it to the Washington Commanders in their home stadium. And you know what? Say if that non PI was controversial, say whatever you want about it, but you can't blow a lead like that when you're up by 18 at the half.
Yes.
It's not as bad as Arizona, but it's pretty bad as
It,
what the Cardinals did
the
one
way
week ago.
it's more the way they blew it was really
Yeah,
bad, and they had
yeah.
chance after chance to, stay in that game. And then
Look, I
obviously
mean,
the very end of the game, you get the freaking Hail Mary, and then you don't get the 2-point conversion. That's just typical Denver luck. It's just unfortunate for the Broncos. I think this is they're gonna get steamrolled.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
Russell
Look,
Wilson, horrible year last year. Looks a little better this year, but not great. I mean, I think he's, washed up, but he's not the quarterback he was in
right
Seattle.
now,
Um,
the Dolphins will take care of business. They'll
yes.
cakewalk and they'll definitely grab the win.
Yeah, I think this could be another 150 yard plus game for Tyreek Hill,
Oh yeah,
especially with the fact that I believe Jalen Waddle has a concussion and we're not sure if he's playing this week.
yeah,
So, uh, Tyreek Hill could have a monster performance against him. So, not much to say here. I think this game's pretty clear unless something crazy happens.
yep,
The next game I want to move on to is, and this is a team I feel, I'm not a fan of. I feel really bad for a heartbreaking injury. We got the Titans versus Browns, and I feel for the Browns and their fans right now with the whole Nick Chubb injury. I saw the video in slow motion,
yeah.
zoomed
It's
in, and
it's
it was
it's
brutal.
it is not a pretty sight, and he tore multiple ligaments in his knee from that hit.
Yeah.
Easily done for the year, and it's a shame because he's a good back. He's a key piece to that Cleveland offense, and now he's going to be out for the campaign. So, all the best to him. Hopefully, he recovers well. But the point is, look, Tennessee came back versus L.A. and the Browns are not bad so far this year. So I want to lean more towards Cleveland. I mean, again, Tennessee had the comeback. Tannehill's not good. Hopkins has been somewhat of a help, but they're still not a great team. And like you've said, Jay, Derrick Henry has not had the best start to
No.
2023. So at the end of the day, you lean towards Cleveland, and Nick Chubb or no Nick Chubb, the Browns will pick up the victory.
Yes. Look, the Browns look terrible against the Steelers, but I think a lot of that was an injury like that to your top guy really
Oh
takes a
yeah.
lot of energy away. It's hard to bounce back after seeing something like that happen to your star running back.
And
And
they're going
and
to be motivated to bounce back this week to grab a win following that.
they want to win for Chubb, yes.
Yeah.
In this game you have to rely now a lot on Amari Cooper. He's a big
Yeah.
piece now. He's your top guy. One thing I'll say, once Chubb went down with that injury, I was very impressed with that kid Ford stepping up.
Mm.
Kid looked really good. So maybe we see more of him. I still don't really trust Tannehill too much. Not that I trust Watson either. I just think Watson is better. And we've discussed it. You just brought it up too. It seems like a down year for Derrick Henry. They really
Right.
haven't even gotten DeAndre Hopkins involved that much.
Right.
So I just don't see the Titans winning this game. I think Cleveland bounces back and gets that win for Chubb.
Yep.
Next game I want to get into is Bills versus Commanders. What do you got?
Buffalo looked good. Josh Allen was back. They steamrolled Las Vegas. Maybe a steamroll again, but I think Buffalo takes this game in a very comfortable way. Sam Howell played good.
Yeah.
The Commanders had a great comeback, but those first 20 minutes, or rather, first 30 minutes, were not pretty.
No.
So the fact that they had to come back like that is a little concerning. But now, let's say they're down to Buffalo by 20 points or whatever it is at halftime. It's going to be a whole different story, this time if you're trying to make the comeback versus Josh Allen and the Bills
Yep.
when Josh Allen is getting things going now following a tough week 1. So I think Buffalo wins, and Washington will have a decent effort, but
Yeah.
I think I see them coming short.
Yeah, no, 100%. I just overall, I mean, Diggs looks great. Allen looked great again. The Commanders, don't get me wrong, they've actually looked good. But I don't think that team doesn't compare to Buffalo at all.
Yeah, yeah,
Kincaid looks good. Dawson Knox looks good again. Great game from Gabe Davis. I think Buffalo's waking up. And I think it'll be. I don't want to say it'll be a blowout, but I think it'll be a 2 possession deficit to end the game.
yeah.
I just I don't know. Howell's been good, but he hasn't been great. He definitely has some flaws out there. Again, I don't, have too much on this game. This is probably one of the easier games that should easily be able to be called. But yeah, I will lean towards the Bills on this one. The next one, and I think it's pretty clear who wins this, especially with no Anthony Richardson potentially because of the concussion. We got Colts versus Ravens. What do you got?
Yeah, Baltimore. I mean, again, they've been good. They're 2-0 for a reason. They're playing strong, and Anthony Richardson has been very impressive so far. Now,
Yes.
again, he suffered the concussion. That'll be a setback for a while. But without him, yeah, I mean, maybe they make some type of competitive effort, but I think Baltimore will take care of business. And as of right now, with how well they're playing, they're on the way to going 3-0.
Yes, I'm gonna go Baltimore in this one as well. No hate on Gardner Minshew. He's not actually a bad quarterback. He's a guy that needs to be there in there consistently to really
Yeah.
show what he could do. Just coming in for a game or two, just not the best thing for him. But with no Anthony Richardson, I don't see it. I mean, obviously on top of that, they don't have Jonathan Taylor still.
Right.
Well, obviously the Ravens are getting beat up pretty bad with injuries. They don't have Dobbins anymore. Odell got hurt last week. I just overall they're the better team. So I'm gonna go Ravens. I think Mark Andrews is a big guy to look out for in this game.
Yeah.
Maybe even Bateman. I like Zay Flowers looks amazing as well. So yeah, I think Ravens are gonna be going 3-0. This is the last game of the 1 o'clock window. A division battle. We got the Patriots Jets. Who do you have?
New England has looked good, but they've had 2 tough opponents. And the Jets have a win, but they looked horrible in Dallas.
Yep.
So my gut leans towards New England. If Mac Jones can play the way he's playing and they can be more consistent, I think they'll grab the win. I mean, the Jets will still put some type of effort on the table versus Jones and company, but with the history on top of the fact that New England has lost 2 tough games,
Yep.
I think they finally cracked third time's a charm.
I think so as well. Again, in both defeats, they look good and could have easily won both their games.
Oh, yeah.
The one thing for me is it's hard for me to ever put my trust into Zach Wilson.
Oh, yeah.
You just don't know what Zach Wilson's going to show up.
But the Jets have no choice right now.
I do wonder if a few more weeks of Zach Wilson performances like he put up against the Cowboys, do the Jets go out and look for a veteran quarterback?
It's possible. I mean, they were saying that they might make a move for Colin Kaepernick, but that died down. Maybe they make a trade before the deadline. I don't know what they're going to do. It depends how he plays. Unless if he, turns the ship around and really plays well enough to get that job, maybe he stays.
Yeah.
But if the Jets are, I don't know, 1-5 or 1-6, 6-7 weeks into the season, then that's where the alarm bells ring and you might have to trade for somebody.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna go the Patriots overall. I mean, obviously, yeah, you got Garrett Wilson and some good players on the Jets, but
Yeah.
I've been besides week 1, I've been more impressed with the Patriots actually, despite being 0-2.
Oh yeah.
Um, First game of the 4 o'clock window, we got Panthers Seahawks. Curious what you think on this one.
Jason, really, really. Seattle. I mean, look, they look bad in week 1, but they played very well in week 2.
Yep.
And Carolina is, they're a young team. They're not good. Their defense ain't pretty. Seattle's coming off that great comeback win. They're going to win the game. I mean, you can choose Seattle in your sleep for this game. That's how
Yes.
much they're going to win
No,
it.
no, I agree. I mean, the Panthers played a little better than they did in week 1. They
Sure.
got Thielen involved. Um, but the Seahawks, I mean, you got Kenneth Walker, you got Metcalf, you got Tyler Lockett. There's just
Mm-hmm.
no comparing those teams at all.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
Seattle, like we said, had a bad first week, but I think they woke up last week against Detroit. They're gonna move to 2-1. Again, the Panthers are gonna struggle to start the season. That's what happens to a young team like that. I think towards like the second half of the season, they might start to play better, but the first half's gonna be a struggle for them. Um, okay, so the next game I want to get into is the Bears and Chiefs, Alex. Who do you got in this one?
Jason, the second straight time I've got crummy matchup between Seattle and Carolina. We know Seattle's going to win. And then you throw this dog pile on me. I mean, come on. It's clearly going to be Kansas City. Chicago is an absolute disaster. And it's good that the Chiefs finally won a game. They looked awful in week 1. They finally
Yep.
beat Jacksonville. Wasn't the best effort, but it was good enough, of course, to win that first game of the season. Chicago is an absolute disaster. And
Yeah.
whether Pat Mahomes is throwing to Kelsey or not, they're going to win the game because the Bears' offense is so discombobulated,
Yep.
and their defense, on top of that, has given up more than 25 points in back to back games to begin the season. And now
Yeah.
you're playing Mahomes. No way Chicago's going to win. No way.
Yeah. And then, one thing is obviously, putting in now Chris Jones is back, Travis Kelce's back. He doesn't necessarily look 100% Travis Kelce, but it's a completely different team. It's the dangerous Chiefs that we know. Justin Fields been a massive disappointment so far to start this year. I just, I don't really have any faith in the Bears in this one. I think this is going to be a blowout. They're going to run them out of Kansas City. The Bears might cancel their hotel for the night there if they had a hotel. They might not want to stay in Kansas City after that. It could be really bad. I could see them giving up well over 30 points in that game, and maybe the Bears don't even reach. The Bears might not even reach 20. I really wouldn't be shocked. And that's being nice, giving
Look,
them
I mean,
potentially
I'm not
20.
sure. No, no, no. They've been horrific, and Justin Fields, like you said before, has been an utter disappointment in only 2 games, guaranteed. But Chicago is just beyond discombobulated, and their play calling is not the best either.
No.
Now, some teams don't have the best play calling to begin with, but I know straws and noodles that can make better calls
Yeah.
than Matt Eberflus for Chicago's head coach,
Yeah.
So it's just a mess.
The
They're a
one
mess.
thing, yeah.
Expect them to lose.
The one thing I'll say about Chicago before we move on to the next game is I feel like every year we go into the season, this is going to be a better Bears team. This is going to be a better Bears team, and they completely disappoint every time. And I know as a Packers fan, you love to see that. But how many more times could you go in with high expectations and just blow it? You know, eventually the
I mean,
fans
look,
are not even going to be able to have faith in them.
well, I mean, the fans haven't had faith in the Bears in years. Let's be
Yeah,
honest with
true,
you.
true.
The last good year they had was in 2006, and they lost the Super Bowl to Peyton Manning. Before
Yeah,
that, 1985, when the Bears were the Bears, and that was really it. No, I mean, no. Chicago is terrible. They're an absolute disaster. And, they've had some great players throughout their history, but the Bears are an absolute joke.
yeah,
They're an absolute disaster. And with Chicago, with how poor they've been, and most likely how it could continue, if this is a week by week trend, I mean this is going into one of the worst seasons in Bears history
yeah.
potentially. if this gets really worse
So
week
I
after
want
week.
I want to ask you, over under 4 wins for the Bears.
I mean, I don't know the full extent of their schedule, but the fact that they lost to Green Bay, they lost to Tampa, they're playing Kansas City this week, that's not going to go well. I would have to look more at their schedule to give you a more definite answer. But honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't win less than 4 games.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on, another game you're gonna love to talk about. We got the Cowboys and Cardinals. Who do you got?
Ugh. So we go from Carolina to Seattle. We go from the Bears to the Chiefs. And now we go from Dallas to Arizona. I mean, I get that most of these teams are towards the Midwest and the West Coast, but are these the 425 games or 405 games we have so far? At this point, just play these games at 3 a.m. and get it over with. I mean, these are going to be disaster games. Seattle's going to kill them. Kansas City's going to kill them. And Micah Parsons and the Cowboys are going to steamroll the Cardinals. Now, let's say Arizona leads by 20 points again for a second straight week after halftime. They'll still find a way to blow that game. So Arizona is just a disaster. Dallas is playing a lot better. And the problem with Dallas, though, they played 3 crummy teams
Yep.
that have make them look better than they really are.
Yes.
They're not that good.
No, I think Dak Prescott is extremely overrated. Um,
Yeah.
and the one thing that's gonna be brutal about this Sunday, where we're talking about these 3 games in a row, those are the only 3 games in the 4 o'clock window.
Wow. So again, that proves my point. Where, I mean, if that's your 4 o'clock window, that's a pretty bad 4 o'clock window. I
I'm
mean,
just curious who let that happen when they were making the schedule. That's genuinely the only thing I'm wondering. Um, Again, it is 3. I mean, look, there's probably one that could shock us a little. I feel like that always happens. There's no way it can be 3 blowouts, right? I mean, you would think not, right?
right. I mean, you would hope not, but with the way these teams are playing, you wouldn't be surprised if that
Yeah.
happens. But honestly, if you look at it before the season began, Justin Fields versus Patrick Mahomes sounds like a pretty good matchup.
Yes.
Dak Prescott versus Kyler Murray, pretty decent matchup. You know, all these schedules are made and all these opponents are set years before they actually
Yes.
happen. So if you knew the future and you knew that the Cardinals would be bad, you knew that the Bears would be an utter disaster 2 weeks in, but you also knew that Carolina's Carolina, and despite it being Bryce Young and Geno Smith, I mean, I just don't see how these are entertaining matchups. I mean, it's sort of
No.
similar to how bad the Thursday night football games were last year,
Yeah.
and how bad and how bad the Monday night football games were last year also. So,
Yes.
look, I don't know what they're thinking. It's not going to be a pretty 4 o'clock block, and you will probably have 3 blowouts in favor of Seattle, Kansas City, and Dallas.
Yes, I will say, and this means a lot. This is just how bad the Bears look and how bad the Panthers look. I think the team least likely to get blown out is actually Arizona here. Out of the 3 crappy,
Yeah,
mediocre teams, they've looked the best. They've been in their games. Yes, they blew it to the Giants.
that's fair.
They were in their first game of the season against the Commanders. Dobbs has not looked that bad. James Conner still looks like himself.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I do think that that is the least likely game. If there's one that isn't going to be a blowout, it could be that one. But
I
I'm
mean,
not saying
yes,
Dallas
and
loses.
oh no, sure. I mean, no, I mean Dallas is going to win the game.
No.
The thing is, though, with Arizona, you know, the more you think about it, it could be a little more competitive. I mean, they were up by what, more than 14 points
Yes.
at at the halftime. Then they blew it to Big Blue, and then the week previous they were in it with Washington towards the end. So, I mean, maybe, but at the same time, look, I mean, again, Dallas is not that good, but they've been exposing bad teams for how bad they really are. They
Yes.
beat the Giants 40-0. They beat the Jets 30-10.
Yeah.
And now you've got a Cardinals team where Dom has been good, but their defense is atrocious and the offensive line is so discombobulated. I
Yep.
mean, the amount of false start penalties that team took against the Giants was absolutely ridiculous. They are
Yeah.
disorganized. They are, just a loose cannon, basically. So,
Yes.
I mean, again, Dallas will just play a full game. Parsons will play well. Dak will look good,
Yeah, yeah.
and then they'll pick up that victory.
I
So
do.
it's really just
I can't wait, Alex, until they play a really good team and we see the usual Dak Prescott.
well, Jason, this happens every year. Dak Prescott beats up on the below 500 teams, and then when he plays a good team at the time, like a Kansas City, like a Green Bay, New England Patriots, or this year, when they play the Eagles or whatever team you want to name, he's not going to be that good,
No.
and he tends to throw more picks against better teams and throws a lot less against worse teams.
Yeah.
No. I mean, I actually used this analogy last week. Dak Prescott reminds me of the fried dough at Citi Field. It seems good at first. After you taste it, you feel queasy, you feel a little sick, and then you end up on the toilet. So the point is that Dak Prescott seems good at first, but he really craps out like the Citi Field fried dough.
Yeah.
And not just that, it's expensive. Dak Prescott's not worth $45 million. Citi Field fried dough is not worth $9. So that tells you a lot.
Yes. That hits me. I've experienced the city
Yeah.
bread dough. Not fun. But yeah, no, you're 100% right. He is overrated. I can't believe how many people really hype him up as an amazing quarterback. I've actually spoken to a couple Cowboys fans, and they've even said he's very overhyped.
Oh yeah. Well, look. I mean, look. Which honestly, the fact that some Cowboys fans told you that's surprising because Dak is a freaking saint compared,
Yeah, yeah.
for these people.
No, 100%. But yeah, no, out of that terrible block of games, that's the least likely to be a blowout in my mind.
Yeah.
We move to something better. Sunday night games. Can't wait to get to those after the 1 o'clock games end. Um, we got a amazing rivalry, two teams that aren't great, but we got Steelers Raiders, which I think is going to be a fun one just because of the rivalry. I feel like those games are always intense with those two teams. What do you
Oh
got
yeah.
for that one?
Well, look. I mean, this is more of a coin toss. This game, especially the historic Franco Harris immaculate reception game, always turns out to be physical and always has a very intriguing ending.
Yeah,
Honestly, you could see that happen, or you could see Pittsburgh or Vegas lean more one way or the other way.
yeah,
Now, Vegas barely beat Denver, but they got blown out by Buffalo. Pittsburgh got killed by San Francisco, but they steamrolled Cleveland.
yep,
So you don't know what you're exactly getting. It depends how Vegas starts. It also depends how Pittsburgh plays a full 60 minutes. If Pittsburgh plays a full game, they're going to win the game.
yes,
If Vegas starts strong and ends strong, then they're going to win the game.
yep,
So it's really a coin toss, and honestly, it could go either way. Based off last week, I'm leaning more towards Pittsburgh because they did beat Cleveland up, and the Raiders just got trashed in Buffalo.
yep.
So I lean more towards Pittsburgh, despite the fact that it could go one way or the other, and that seems to be many
Raiders,
Raiders
yeah,
Steelers games because again, the rivalry is so intense. And back in the 70s, the stakes were on the line
yeah.
to make a Super Bowl, you know? So
Oh,
it just tells you a
100%.
lot about how historic this is, the great players that came from it. And for this game, you're going to need that same type of effort to win the game, whoever does.
Oh, 100%. I'm gonna go Steelers in this one, but the one thing I noticed from Monday's game that they need to do a better job of Sunday. You need because you have a really good tight end there. You got to get Pat Fryermuth more involved
Yeah.
because he was used a lot to block. Kenny Pickett didn't really look at him a few times when he was open. That's a guy you got to get involved. If you get him involved, especially with the fact that you don't have Deontay Johnson, that's a must. Get
Yeah.
Pat Fryermuth involved. Uh,
Yeah. I mean,
if
I was going to mention that too. And on top of Johnson being hurt, you got to give a guy like Pickett as many targets as possible.
yes,
But at the same time, you got to let TJ Watt be TJ Watt.
yep,
Let him do his thing. Let this Pittsburgh defense, front seven especially, just get so much pressure to Garoppolo. You do that past the Raiders O line, That's not going to be exactly enough to win the game, but it's going to give you a lot of support to make sure you defeat Las Vegas this weekend.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, especially also another thing I failed to mention was the possibility of no Adams because he has a concussion.
Right.
So if
Yeah.
Adams is out of the game, it's just there's no shot for the Raiders.
Maybe with Josh Jacobs, maybe with Hunter Renfro, but yeah, I mean, you lose that big target for Jimmy G, and yeah, I mean, things aren't going to be as great. And when Adams got hurt versus Buffalo, obviously the whole ship went down sinking.
Oh yeah.
So it's that might be a key element as to how Vegas could lose the game if they fall short in week 3.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's gonna be a fun game. I'm looking forward to that. I'll take my nap during the 4 o'clock games. And we'll get to that one, which will be a good one. And then we got the 2 Monday night games, which I'm excited about. We got Eagles, Buccaneers. Who do you got in that one?
Look, I mean, this one's also a toss-up. Now, Philadelphia's 2-0, but they're barely 2-0. Tampa Bay's actually looked really good
Yeah,
in both of their wins, and Baker Mayfield has surprisingly played very well.
yeah,
Look, whether the quarterback is Baker, Tom Brady, Jameis Winston, whoever it is, Mike Evans will be Mike Evans,
yes,
and Chris Godwin will be Chris Godwin.
yes,
That doesn't make a difference. But the thing is with Baker is that Baker has actually been consistent the past 2 weeks. Now, can he do that versus Philadelphia? Maybe. The Eagles have all these different injuries and these problems on defense. But at the same time, if Jalen Hurts just snaps out of this funk and DeAndre Swift can play the game he did like he did versus Minnesota,
yep.
then Philadelphia could win the game. The problem with the Eagles is that they haven't played a full 60 minutes.
No,
Versus New England, strong first quarter. Following that, so back and forth, they barely won. Same thing versus Minnesota.
yeah,
Strong first half, had some mistakes, but
almost
in
blew
the
it.
second half, you almost blew the game to
Yeah,
Minnesota. So, look, I mean, Philadelphia has to play a full 60 minutes. And really, this is Philly's game to lose.
yes,
If they lose this game, it's more of a Philadelphia loss than a Tampa Bay actually won, if that's
yes,
the result.
yes. The one thing I will say is even at the points of those games where Philly was winning both of them, Hurts still, even when they were winning those games, did not look great. He did not
Yeah,
look like himself. His
right.
throws are off. He had that one pick, I believe. I forgot which game it was. That was right down the middle. That cannot be thrown.
Yeah,
That got
yeah,
intercepted. That's just a terrible
yeah. That
throw. I think that
yeah,
was the
that was
Vikings
versus
game.
Minnesota.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Um.
that
He.
that was versus Minnesota. That was not pretty at all.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I mean, you kind of understood what he was trying to do, but at the
But
same
you,
time,
even as a fan on TV, could read that that was gonna get intercepted.
oh yeah, I mean, he threw it right in traffic double coverage, and I mean, Minnesota knew that was coming right to them. So it was just awful.
Yeah, and he doesn't even look like himself running the ball. He looks almost scared, like he did in his rookie year, where like he's not doing those good runs. He kind of gets like a yard or two and gets stopped. I don't know. He just does not look good to me. And as crazy as it sounds, I must be dreaming. I never thought I'd say this. I've been more impressed with Baker Mayfield than him. Um,
Well, look, I mean, part of it has been Philly's play call for him because on 3rd down and 8, they're running the ball with Jalen Hurts,
can't
and
do
that
that.
makes
No,
no sense whatsoever.
that's how you
That's a
get your
horrible
quarterback
play
out.
call.
That's how you get your quarterback out.
Exactly. So that plays somewhat of a role potentially in why he's not running as strongly as he did last year.
Yeah.
But at the same time, no. I mean, look. I mean, again, he's been shaken up. Part of it could still be the shoulder injury from last year's
Yep.
postseason. Maybe that's part of it. But at the same time, no, this is a game where Philadelphia has to play a full 60 minutes. And if they barely win, all right, they're 3-0, good for them. But it's not that much of an impressive win.
Yeah, so the one thing I don't know how much I could give the shoulder injury that either because keep in mind it's been 7 months, over 7 months now.
Yeah, that's fair.
Um I don't know. He's gotta get it going. And the other thing is if the Eagles want to succeed this year, because you could see he was getting pissed off with the last game, you gotta figure out a way to get AJ Brown in the game more because he was not
Oh
involved
yeah,
at all. Like it was mainly Devontae Smith and DeAndre Swift. That's all it really was. And
I mean, my thing is for this Philly team, you bring in all these targets. You have all these targets:
yeah,
Brown, Smith, Goddard. Now you got Swift. You've got all these different weapons basically for Jalen Hurts to play with.
yeah,
And any quarterback that has a variety of weapons does better when they're throwing to multiple players instead of one or two limited guys.
yeah,
So you do that with Jalen Hurts, and that was the case last year, obviously. I don't know why they're not doing that. You got to have that happen.
yeah. No, yeah, and I think the other thing was I think they got too focused towards the end of the game. Rather than the short plays and sometimes just going for the first down, they were trying to bomb the ball sometimes, and it just wasn't working. You got to pick up on what's working and what's not, and that wasn't working. Again, you got two elite guys like AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. You could occasionally bomb the ball, but they did try that a little too much, in my opinion, and it becomes
Yeah.
predictable. And again, with the AJ Brown situation, not getting him involved too much, it just if people know you're just gonna throw to Devontae Smith, the guy's gonna get covered like crazy. So it
Oh,
hurts
sure.
you. Yeah. So again, I'm gonna go with an upset here. I'm taking the Bucks in this game. I think the Bucks win it.
Look, I mean, again, things will go either way. I'm going to lean towards Philly because they still somehow find a way to win these games despite almost blowing them.
Hmm.
And again, like I've said time and time again already, I do not trust Baker Mayfield. Again, he's starting to play better. He's playing good. He's starting to get permission to drive my car this weekend. But when it comes to the full Monday to Friday scale, I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna lean towards Philadelphia just for the sake of it.
Okay. And now we got our final game, which at this point now with the two losses, this feels like a must win for the Bengals. We got the Rams versus Bengals. Who do you got?
Look, Joe Burrow has looked awful, and the Bengals have been an absolute mess. LA looked really good versus the Seahawks, and despite losing to Frisco, they still played pretty well.
Yeah.
Puka Nacua has been a really unique talent so far since Cooper Cup's been injured the whole season thus far in these 2 weeks. So you got to go with the hot hand in LA. And honestly, I mean, these two teams are much different than it was in the Super Bowl 2 years ago.
Yep.
But the Rams are the much better team. The Bengals are an absolute disaster. Higgins is not getting lots of throws to him. Neither is Jamar Chase. Joe
Yeah.
Burrow, ever since getting paid, has been an absolute disaster. He's now hurt as well. So look, I mean, Cincinnati last year was 0-2. There were some concerns, but they turned it around.
Yeah.
This year, you
Looks
got
much
the
worse.
injuries, you've got the inconsistencies, you've got just you've got no chemistry as you've had in years prior. Things just don't look right on top of Burrow being hurt and not playing well. So if you're the Rams, it's your game to lose. But at the same exact time, I mean, Cincinnati, they right now they just don't have a fighting chance.
Yeah. The one thing between last year, first off, I said this last week. The Bengals never put up 3 points in either of those first two losses. That's one thing. And both games that they lost to start the season, they were in last year. It was a game.
Oh yeah.
I believe one of the first two games they may have even lost off a field goal last year. I could be wrong on that, but I feel like it was a very late, deciding thing that happened in the game. It is what it is, but they just have looked terrible in each game, including a home game where the weather was fine. Okay, fine. Week one, rainy, terrible, terrible situation. Even though it did not affect Cleveland at all, it only affected them.
Right.
Fine. Forget about it. Come back home, good weather, and go win that game. And they still looked bad. Um.
Well,
So
I mean that Jason, but Cleveland and Cincinnati both play in the state of Ohio.
yes,
They, they play in the same states.
yeah,
So Cincinnati's used to bad weather to begin with. I mean, look, if you play in Miami, somewhere down south like that in Miami, Or you play in San Francisco, all right, maybe, but you're still a pro football player. You should play in whatever weather.
Yeah.
But
I know
you're in
some guys, for
Cincinnati,
example, when they're in
you're in Cleveland.
Miami. I know some people in Miami get affected by the heat and stuff like that. That
Yeah.
happens. But yeah, no, you're in Cleveland. Sorry, you're in Cincinnati. They're in Cleveland. No excuse. I agree.
Look, I mean, again,
And
it
you're
just it
playing in
just
the same conditions, both teams.
oh yeah.
You're both
Yeah.
dealing with the rain. Only one team was affected by it. But the one
Yeah.
thing, and they discussed it in week 1 that I never actually noticed about Burrow, he does have small hands, they said, which
Hmm.
tends to affect him with grip. So the rain's a problem for
Well,
him.
well, look, I mean, part of it's been that, but part of it also, I mean, rain or not, he's an NFL quarterback.
Yeah.
And despite him being a NFL quarterback, that shouldn't make a difference. And the guy played phenomenal last year. He's been great ever since he tore his ACL. And in college, he had the greatest college year ever for any quarterback.
Yes.
So don't give me that. Seriously, don't
No,
give me that
I
stuff.
mean, look, in my opinion, if you're able to deal with getting sacked, hit, whatever, you should be able to play in rain. I just feel
Mm-hmm.
that way.
Look, I mean, look, again, look, they've been a mess. Cincinnati's not been good. They're going to be 0-3. The question is, where do they go from week 3? Are they going to be able to bounce back, or do things look disastrous? And was this a short-term run for Cincinnati, and this year starts to put things more downhill? I don't know, but if you're the Rams, you can't lose this game.
no.
And if you do lose the game somehow, then that's on you, because again, the Bengals have just been horrific. The Rams are not great, but they've been good enough. They've been
I mean, they
somewhat
competed with
impressive
the
so far.
Niners. They competed with the
They
Niners,
did.
yes.
They did. And look, I'll give them the blowout versus Seattle. The Rams have been a good team so far. But at the same time, look, I mean, who knows how long this jig will last with Puka Nakua?
Yeah.
Who knows how long this jig will last when you got San Francisco and Seattle starting to get things going again?
Yeah.
So I'm not sold on the Rams, but in this matchup I am, because of how bad the Bengals are.
Yes. Um, One thing I'll say is, again, I'm not necessarily sold on the Rams either. They played good, don't get me wrong. I am impressed with some of the young kids like Puka Nakua. That kid at Tutu Atwell looks good.
Yeah.
Kyron Williams looks really good for them. So they got some young. They're a very young team now. Stafford hasn't looked bad either. I could only imagine that team when Cup comes back. But the one thing I'm curious about, and how you feel, if Puka Nakua keeps this up and Cup eventually comes back and continues to have these injury problems, could you see them eventually moving off from him and Puka Nakua becoming the main guy? You're paying Cup a
I mean,
lot of money to repeatedly get hurt.
yeah.
So
Look, it's possible. I mean, you can't guarantee it, but at the same time, if you look at the situation, all right, he's good, he plays well, maybe he has a good season altogether. You can't base it off 1 year though. Cooper Cup
no,
is the
God forbid.
franchise,
Then yeah, God
basically.
forbid you move
Oh
on
yeah.
from Cup and the next year's a disaster for Puka Nakua.
Oh,
Yes.
oh yeah. So look, I mean, it's something that if it comes down to that, which I don't think it will, that will take a couple of years until they reach that potential point.
Yes.
But at the same time, you know, Cooper Cup's the franchise, and yeah, he might get hurt, he might get banged up, but they're gonna be committed to him regardless.
Yes.
And along with that, if Cup can't play for whatever reason, and Puka is able to, build a, solid foundation, not this year, but for more years to come,
I guess
then
why lose
really
Cup when you can have him out there as well when he's healthy and you already have Puka? So yes, you're right.
that, but also the fact, let's say Cooper Cup is starting to phase out, you phase him out and you phase Puka in even more. That's
Yep.
what the Rams really do, where again, you're committed to Cup regardless. You're also committed to Puka, and you don't lose much, if anything.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, look, the one thing that concerns me about Cup is, look, he's an amazing player when he's in the lineup, but I don't remember the last time he played a full season. And I look,
Oh, I couldn't tell you either.
a full season's not expected in the NFL. It's a grueling sport. But
Sure.
when I say he misses games, he misses like 4 to 5 a year, sometimes more.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Sure.
and that is a concern because that's your top player. I'm sure he has an insane contract. I'm not sure what the exact contract he has is, but you need more than that from your top guy. He needs to be able to stay in the lineup. It's a huge loss for you.
Well, look again. There's a difference between him and Cam Akers. Now, the Rams dealt Cam Akers this week to Minnesota. The difference between him and Cup is that Cup is a franchise guy.
Yep.
Cam Akers has been in and out of the lineup for years for the Rams,
Yep.
and not just that, they had Todd Gurley before him. They even had Daryl Harrison take over. At at one point he was the main
Yeah.
guy as the running back
Yeah,
for the
I'll
Rams.
say on
Cam
the
Akers
Todd
was
Todd
injured,
Gurley
and yeah,
situation,
yeah.
I've never seen a demise of a career so fast. He went from an elite player to I believe he got arthritis, I believe, something like that.
I'm not
And
sure, but
it
yeah.
just complete and total collapse from, what he was. And that happened within one season, I feel like.
Oh
So,
yeah, but the thing is that Akers is not that guy like Cup.
no.
Akers, he's not expendable, but he's a guy where okay, he can be replaced easily if something happens, if he gets hurt, if he doesn't play well, whatever.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm shocked they kept him for so long, and
No,
the
I
fact that,
know.
they finally dealt him says a lot.
Yeah. No, 100%.
Cup is not that. Cup 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 is different. Cup is a guy who is a franchise player, who is your Super Bowl MVP 2 seasons ago, and on top of that, whether he's healthy or not, he's still your franchise. So they're not going to get rid of him until he retires, whenever that is. And if Puka's the guy, Puka phases his way in to be Cooper Cup 2.0 to a certain extent.
Yeah. No. Look, I was just curious on your opinion on that. I think it would take uh something massive for Cup to be moved. Like you said, he's
Oh
the
yeah,
franchise guy. He's the face of that team, and even if he's not in the lineup, he is a big piece to have at the games. Sideline, he could talk and mentor the younger players out there who are on offense, like a Puka
right.
Nakua, a Tutu
Yeah,
Atwell, a Kyron Williams. So I do think he is an important piece of that team. So you do need him around. You are right. I just wanted
yeah.
to see what you thought of that. Because again, when you have a guy you're paying that much money and he just can't stay healthy, that does have to freaking frustrate a team. It really does.
Oh no, look at Aaron Rodgers. They paid him all that money. He was injured half the time, and he still was able to win 4 MVPs out of it. So
Yeah.
you either you bounce back and you play strong, or you don't bounce back. And at the end of the day, you're paying this guy to sit on the bench. But again, a guy like Cooper Cup, he's been injured, but he still performs for you.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I mean, dude, it's got some good games this week. I'm really excited about it. Again, except the 4 o'clock window. That's just gonna be terrible.
Look,
Um,
Jay, the 4 o'clock window will put me to sleep too. I might take a nap. I might even take some melatonin and go straight to bed at that point. That's how bad the window's gonna be.
yeah. The one thing for me, and I said it earlier, I usually do one stream on a Sunday just because I usually watch football. I'm probably gonna squeeze in a second one just because of how bad those games are gonna be. I don't want to watch that. Um, it's 3 potential blowout games, and
Yeah.
who wants to watch that? And it does suck. I don't know what happened that there was potentially only 3 games at 4 o'clock. Um, but it is what it is. It's one week of really trashy 4 o'clock games. I mean, the 4 o'clock games are obviously always significantly worse than the 1 o'clock games for the most part. Besides
I
one or
mean,
two 4 o'clock games that are good, there's usually one that's in there. But the 1 o'clock
that's
games are usually
fair.
better.
I mean, some are, but also, if if these big matchups can't be on NBC or Prime Now and ESPN and whatever else, you put them on the 4 o'clock block on Fox. You put them on the 4 o'clock block on CBS for a reason,
Yeah,
because they've got some big, some some big draw to it.
Yes.
So, despite it not being a Sunday night football game, the 425 section, especially for Fox, that's their game of the week. And that's a big deal. And
Yep.
usually it's a good game. And sometimes it's not. But for the most part, that 425 block is a really big deal,
Yep.
especially on Fox.
Yeah, no, I agree. But yeah, no, fun. It's gonna be a fun weekend. We got some fun games again. Again, I appreciate you coming on, talking about the games. Yeah, exciting times. NFL's back. The one thing I always say is I love baseball, but without the NFL, NHL, NBA during that summertime, it always feels like a massive void without, especially the NFL.
Yeah,
So.
yeah.
You know, you just got baseball, 162 games of it watching for us. The Mets and the Cardinals absolutely suck. And,
Look,
it's just
look.
terrible.
Wayno finally got 200 wins. I'm very happy for Wainwright. I'm
Only
very
took
happy that
3 months
that
to reach that, but
oh my good. I mean, at this point, it took him 200 years to get it. I mean, look. He finally got it. I'm thrilled with it. But the Cardinals have been an absolute disaster, and the Mets aren't pretty either.
no. Look, I'm happy my second team is Baltimore, and I get to see a team in the playoffs. And I'm not gonna sit here and say I'm 100% a Baltimore fan, but if I had to pick an American League team, it's Baltimore. But yeah, excited. Week 3 of the NFL. It's gonna be fun week minus the 4 o'clock window. I like having the 2 Monday games. I think that's a cool thing. Obviously, the only negative is the fact that you'll have less games in the 4 o'clock window. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but still, yeah, I appreciate you coming on, talking about week 3. Eh, like I said, gonna be a fun week, and yeah, I appreciate you hopping in, dude.
Well, Jay, thanks a lot, and I'll talk to you next week.
Hope you guys enjoyed that video where we covered all the week 3 predictions. Again, guys, we're gonna continue to do this every single week. Videos are gonna air every Thursday. We will make sure to cover every single game. We're gonna continue to bring on people every week as well to talk about it. Guys, if you are new, drop a sub, leave a like on the video, and leave a comment with your predictions as well. Hope you guys enjoyed, and see you guys in the next one. Peace, YouTube.